Welcome to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison.
I'm Molly, a former skeptic turned full-time energy healer and teacher.
And I'm Madison, a born and raised witch running my family's crystal shop.
And we're here to explore all things woo through the lens of both science and spirituality so that you can find the moments of magic in your everyday life and create an intentional spiritual practice.
So if that's what you're into, find a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's demystify some magic.
Howdy doody friends.
Howdy doody friends. We're getting political, baby.
Baby. So we're going to talk about kind of like, I always think that elections, voting in general is like one of the witchiest, most magical things you can do for your community. And you're literally casting a vote into the universe of how you want your future to look. Like I don't know anything more magical than that, to be honest.
Votes are spells.
Votes are spells.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Put it on a t-shirt. Hey. But before we dive in, Madison, what was your magic moment?
I have the most mundane of magic moments.
Love it.
If you've been listening to this podcast, you might know that it's been a turbulent time. 2 hurricanes back to back. We're done talking about it. It's okay. But finally, for the first time since this like clusterfuck of hurricanedom happened, I've finally been back to the grocery store.
Hey.
Because we lost power for a week. And so obviously all the food that was in my fridge and freezer, dead and dusted, was tough. Mm-hmm. Very upsetting.
Talk about a cleansing ritual.
Seriously. But I think there was like a little bit of a trauma response in me of not wanting to fill my fridge again because hurricane season isn't over. Well, I guess by the time you're listening to it, I actually don't know if it's over the 1st of November or it's over the 30th of November.
Okay.
So it is still
got time to lose your food.
Oh, still got time. But in November, the likelihood of something developing drops pretty drastically. At least in my experience, I think. Again, I'm not a meteorologist. Call Dennis Phillips if you have problems with what I'm saying on this podcast. He knows better than me. This morning, I went to my fridge. I did my tea ritual. I made my tea because I like milk in my tea, so I haven't had my like usual breakfast like coffee replacement tea because it just isn't the same when I have it with no milk, with just sugar. It's just like not as good.
Sure.
So I've just like been drinking the Mercury retrograde tea. It's a mint tea that I have, whatever. I made eggs. I made myself a little breakfast and it was the best.
I love this for you.
This weekend, I rearranged all the furniture in my bedroom. I like finally unpacked my last couple boxes of things that I've been avoiding. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like over the last 24 hours, I'm a new person. Like the energy is refreshed. Finally, we got our furniture in a place that everybody's happy. I had to concede to Drew that he was right about how some things should live. Drew, one final time, you were right. You're welcome. It's now in a public forum for all to hear. And it was just such, like, I've had such a last couple of days of, like, it is so the little things, you know? And yeah, it's just been, like, I can see the difference in even what feels, like, possible for me in terms of a spiritual practice. Because I'm like, oh, okay, the root is stabilized again. What was your magic moment this week?
My magic moment happened yesterday. Justin and I, because when you're listening to this, I'm going to be in my new house, which is exciting, but I'm still in the midst of packing right now as I record.
It's so weird to think about where it's like, oh, that only comes out a couple weeks from now. What a big life change is coming. I'm so excited.
I know. So yesterday, instead of packing, we decided to go for a nature walk.
Naturally.
Naturally. Tell me of ADHD without telling me. And we went to this like nature walk that we've gone a couple of times. We haven't been all year. But I forget that it's like a high elevation hike. Like it's like a cardio workout. It's like a sprint cardio. Like the dogs were like exhausted. And I was extremely grumpy because I was not prepared for a heavy cardio workout. And so about halfway in, Justin and I are like at each other's throats. I had to pick a tick off of Woody. Like I was just like stomping my feet. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. There was like a lot of dogs around. So like Herc was being really like reactive and like trying to, lunge at the dogs, not like in a violent way, but just like, in a way that triggers my own trauma response around that. And so I was just like pissy the entire last half. We were literally on this hike, like high level cardio, steady state, high impact cardio for 60 minutes. It was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful day. I will say that. And it was peak foliage. So there was that. But I don't like bugs. And I was fucking tired. I was exhausted. I've been doing this play all weekend. We've been moving. I'm just tired. I don't want to do it. So I was a temper tantrum Molly. I was Hurricane Molly the entire last half. But my magic moment is when I get in the truck, when we're finally done, and I was like in this wicked pissy mood, like 5 minutes into the drive home, the endorphins hit me. And I was like, this was so fun. We should do this again.
Yes. Molly's magic moment, gaslighting her husband. I love to see it.
And Justin was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, the endorphins just hit, babe. I feel great. Let's do it again. And it was truly one of those moments where it's like, I because I'm like, you know, a theater kid and also, you know, have ADHD. There's so many things in my life that I don't want to do that I will just like stomp my feet, but then like afterwards feels so much better. And that was just like such a violent example of that for me that I was like, oh, I can apply this to packing. I can apply this to cleaning my bathroom. I can apply this to making dinner.
That's so funny.
It was a nice reminder.
Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. All right. So we've kind of like segmented this episode into things to do before you vote. And if you've already voted because of early voting, I'm with you. We have some things for you to do. And some of these can be applied to like if you've already voted as well. But I think these are also just general like great election day things to do, like things to focus on. Because if you are like me, I will spend the day today sitting and staring at my phone and watching the votes come in. And this is a really, like, a lot of these will just be great ways to, like, pull you out of that doom scrolling tendency that often comes, especially, like, with this entire time of year. Like, it feels like the last 3 months have been in this place of, you know, we're only focused on one thing. So we're going to do some before the election and after the election.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this not on the day that it comes out, there's something for you in here too.
Yeah. And if you're not in the U.S., there's also some things in here for you too, because even though the election's happening in our country, we know that there's a ripple effect across the world.
Mm-hmm. And this is not the only election that matters. Vote in your local elections.
Local elections matter.
Please vote. It's really important.
Please, please, please don't get rid of your right.
That was a good one. That was a good one. Please, please, please don't make me look at Donald Trump for one more night. Okay, anyways.
Heartbreak is one thing, my ego's
my country's another.
I beg you to vote correctly, motherfucker.
This is our musical episode.
All right, let's do this.
All right. I really like to think about voting as a form of spiritual self-care. There's a level of like agency and power that you take back, because I really do, like, you'll see people talking about it all the time, that there's a collective often trying to convince us that our vote doesn't matter. And trying to convince us to give up our vote. And when you decide to use that power, you're taking that power back, because the people who say that your vote doesn't matter, they benefit when you give up that power.
Yeah. I also want to state that because there are people in our country that are not allowed to vote for one reason or another. Maybe you're not of age. Maybe you have a criminal history. Maybe you weren't born here. Like, whatever the case may be, getting involved in politics in general, like, you can replace voting with like some sort of involvement in local or not local politics.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I love the idea of thinking of it as spiritual self-care. I always think of voting as like the ultimate manifestation ritual.
Yeah.
Right? Like when we talk about manifestation, ironically, we're hopefully going to do a science of manifestation episode for you soon, hopefully.
Maybe.
But think about like what manifestation is. It's like deciding what you want, deciding what the outcome you want is, and then taking action as if that outcome is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you are voting, you are deciding what type of future you want in your country, your state, your town, your PTA, whatever. And you are literally casting a ballot into the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are saying, you are taking an action. And I always think about, I've referenced this on the pod before, but the book my mom used to read to me when I was a kid, If Everybody Did, where it's like, okay, we can say, people always say like, oh, my vote doesn't matter because there's so many people, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, what if everybody did? What if everybody thought that way?
Mm-hmm.
What if everybody thought, oh, actually my vote does matter and shows up and votes? Like, we have this opportunity that not everyone has to literally say, this is what I want. This is what I want to see. And whether or not you agree with, like our voting system or whatever, I mean, I'm not saying it's not a flawed system in some ways, but the only way we can enact change is if we use the actions that we are allowed to take, be it voting, campaigning, donating, protesting, like whatever it is, like use your rights rather than just sitting on your hands,
Yeah. And I also think that there's a perspective shift that I've kind of had to lean into because I can kind of fluctuate into that place of like the forces against me feel so large and feel like it's like these swarms of people that like my vote could never make an impact against them. And I've had to really like lean into the smallness. Do you know what I mean? Like really get comfortable with the fact that we are all just as like our votes are all just as quote unquote insignificant. And obviously, like in the US, we have the Electoral College, so that's not exactly always the case. Like there are categorically votes that mean more than others. But I live in Florida, obviously. The people in my county, the people in my state, we are all just tiny, tiny dots.
Mm-hmm.
And each individual person comes together to make those like massive circles that we see on those voting maps as the polls start to close. And realizing that those large circles are accumulations of these tiny, tiny dots. It's like a kind of existential place to go to. I've been in a very existential mood lately. But it's a really great practice in reminding myself how powerful we are when we stand together in something.
Yeah. I think in general, like elections, I feel like are like we have one of two options when it comes to election season. We can lean into like our differences, divide ourselves, or we can lean into our interconnectedness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that on that.
And that's that on that. Great. Perfect.
So rituals you can do if you voted or are going to vote today.
I really love to wear purple to the polls.
Tell me more.
Purple is the color of royalty and power.
Oh.
And so if I channel that version of me, that person that feels really powerful, I'll also like... This is also something that you can do when you fill out your sample ballot that you get in the mail. Like,
okay.
So the ritual starts at home.
What the fuck is a sample ballot?
You don't get sent a sample ballot?
No.
I get sent in the mail exactly what my ballot's going to look like.
No.
Really?
Yeah, it's a surprise.
I
mean, I'm sure I could find one, but
they definitely are online.
I'm in the polling place Googling, like, especially for local election stuff, especially since I'm going to be moving like 4 days before the election. I'm going to be Googling who's running in my new town from the polling place.
That's wild. I did not expect Maine to not do that.
Yeah, voting's different everywhere. Like my brother in Seattle, everyone votes by mail there.
Really?
Yeah, it has its own, set of issues.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's different everywhere. So your sample ballot must be nice.
Really? Okay, well, if you get a sample ballot, I know that you can Google a sample ballot no matter where you live.
Sure.
There are websites that provide it to you. But I like to sit down with my little paper version because that, again, it's like a petition in spell work.
Yeah.
So If I'm going to wear purple to the polls, I'm wearing purple while I fill out my sample ballot. Her eyes are moving like she's looking at her screen. I think she's Googling her sample ballot. See, we're making progress right here on the pod, live and in action.
Main sample ballot, ballotpedia.com. I don't want to sign up for it.
Oh, Ballotpedia, I think, is a good website.
Oh, God.
I think they'll just email it to you. Molly's filling out her sample ballot live on air.
Well, I want to get the sample ballot the fucking email was optional. Okay, complete sample. Ooh, I can get a concise one. Holy fuck.
And I think that's the website that will like kind of dumb it down for you.
Oh my God. Okay, ballotpedia.org. Look up your state. This is new to me. Yeah, I'm seeing like the local, the state, and the federal, as well as the ballot measures on here. Okay.
The future is now.
The future's now. All right. I'm writing my petition.
I love that I could share that with you in this moment. And you're allowed to bring it with you to the polls.
That's going to make my day so much faster.
So you can just fill it out. Yeah. Or if you don't want, like, you can always take a picture of it.
Wow, I love that. Okay, I'll be doing that. Look at that, your sample ballot.
Yes. So you start your ritual with your sample ballot. As you research the candidates, as you research the amendments that are on your ballot, light a candle for power. Wear your purple for power. You know, envision the world that you want to live in and what it looks like. What does it smell like? What does it feel like in your body?
Make a crystal grid. Set your sample ballot in the center underneath a carnelian.
I love that.
Point the quartz points facing out away from your ballot to send that power out into the universe.
I love that.
I love that.
And if you already voted, if you've already done your sample ballot,
take your sticker.
Take your sticker.
Your sticker.
Your sticker.
Or just write, I voted on a sticky note. If your polling place runs out of stickers like mine always does.
You can still print your sample ballot if you want to fill it out again and use it like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You can still bring that energy.
Or like my mom, I saw my mom this weekend. She's got blue nails on. And I was like, I love your nails. She's like, thanks. They're my Harris nails.
Love that.
You could just stick a color.
Wait, I'm stealing that. I did my nails 2 days ago.
Yeah, you can stick a color that represents like whoever you're voting for underneath the carnelian. Paint your nails that color. Wear a scrunchie that color.
I also think that like especially if you've already voted, like getting out and being a part of the like what's the word I'm looking for? It's not protesters, but the people who like stand around and are like, yeah,
the handshakers.
Sure,
that's not the word, but
do
they shake hands in Florida?
No,
who's shaking your hand? This is where I learned that Maine and Florida are even more different than I thought. So if you go to a polling place in Maine, as you walk in, the local candidates will shake your hand, or representatives of the local candidates.
Is there only one? Oh, okay, representatives. I was like, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So like,
but usually like local. So if it's like in each city and each town, there's only like one polling place, sometimes two, depending on like how big the. Yeah. But like my town only has one. So everyone who's in the local election can be there.
Well, this is also where our generational divide shows, because this is only my third presidential election. My second one was COVID. So I've only been to a polling place.
Okay.
For a president, like for a big election like that once. And it was like on my campus. So I don't think they were like, whatever.
Okay. This is only my fourth presidential election.
Oh, okay.
And one was COVID. And one I voted absentee, so.
Okay, never mind. Well, they've never done that for me.
Okay, well.
I'll keep you updated on if I get a handshake, though. But no, usually, like, where I am, and again, this is my first time living in St. Pete in an election year. So I don't know how it goes around here. I've only ever lived in, that's so weird. I lived in our state's capital for 2 presidential elections, and I never got a handshake.
I don't know what to tell you, dude. All I'm saying is elections happen on off years as well.
Well, I know, but I'm talking like, I guess I would see like I'm most likely to get a representative handshake at a presidential election. That's more so what I'm saying. I kind of assumed.
I don't know if that's true.
Well, I guess my polls have kind of looked the same every time I've gone.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they just don't give a fuck about us here. They said, fuck your handshake. Regardless.
Okay, so color magic. What about after election?
So after the election, I really like to, I feel like this is where, like, I think people older than us will maybe have something to weigh in. So, like, tell us what it was like to vote before things felt so scary and
yeah,
everything was terrible. Because ever since I've been politically paying attention, right before I turned 18, right before the election felt very, very scary and divisive. And I felt like there was like these open chasms between me and these other people. And so I will often use this time to really focus on the idea of interconnectedness of all beings.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's when it feels the hardest to acknowledge. You know, there's when someone disagrees with me like so vehemently and aggressively, it feels like sometimes it's really, really hard to even think about us sharing any kind of connection. And that's when I think it's most important to do so. Mm-hmm. Because it's really a time that I ground myself in my belief system that we can't just all be connected when it feels good. I cannot just be connected to these people who agree with me. Like, interconnectedness of all beings really does mean there is like that same source that I pull from is the source that Donald Trump is pulling from, even if I don't fucking like it.
Yeah. Yeah. One practice that I always do, I'll tell you the practice I started doing in 2016. So those of you who've never listened to the pod before, this might sound like news to you. Those who do listen to the pod, none of this will be news to you. But in 2016, when the election happened, I was working as a consent educator. I worked with survivors of sexual violence for 9 years. Have I told you this story?
Probably. But I don't know what story you're about to tell, so I don't know.
Perfect. Election day, the day of election, so that Tuesday, and the Wednesday, the day after, I was in a very specific school. I did a 2-day presentation.
You have told me this story. You have.
I did a 2-day presentation with the same classes, 8th graders, about consent and sexual assault. So Tuesday, have a great time, have a great spirit, normal. And then we get the election results Wednesday morning. I go back into that same school. All the lights are off. Like, there's dark circles under all the teachers' eyes. And I remember doing this presentation talking about consent. And I was saying, like, I was talking about how the example I always give for 8th graders is like, if you're holding hands with someone and say you wanted to hold hands with them and then you decide I don't want to hold hands anymore, you can take your hand back. No one's allowed to take your consent away from you. No one's allowed to tell you that you mean yes when you say no. And I'm saying this to a group of 8th graders, and a kid in the back wearing a red hat says, "That's not what the president says." Mm-hmm. And I just I felt the life leave my body. Mm-hmm. Like, I went back to my office and I just felt like, what is the point of what I'm doing? That was the first moment in my career that I felt like what I do doesn't matter. Like, I'm not making a difference. Like, the most powerful person in our country is now saying the opposite of what I've been trying to teach kids for however many years at that point. And so I really had a moment where I was like, I should just give up. Like, we should just close our doors. Like, what's the point? And that was like a really, really hard thing to feel, knowing that I had to go back into schools the next day and like put on a happy face and like try to continue doing the work. And so what I started doing, and you're gonna hear this and you're gonna be like, ugh, I don't want to do that, but just hear me out, okay? What I started doing was every single night between the election results and the inauguration day, I listened to a loving kindness meditation. It was a 15-minute loving kindness meditation. It's on the Calm app. I also have a loving kindness meditation on my YouTube that you can grab for free if you want to. And I would direct the loving kindness affirmations. Basically, like a loving kindness practice, you direct it at yourself. May it be safe, may it be happy, may it be healthy, may it be at peace, to yourself, and then to someone you love, and then to a stranger, and then to someone you don't like. And it's really this idea of like cultivating universal friendliness and universal kindness. And the person I don't like, I would hold Donald Trump in my mind and send these words of loving kindness to him. And at first it was like, I would feel it in my chest, like tighten. I would feel like nauseous and whatever. But I knew that, you know, the whole idea of why we do this in the loving kindness practice is because if you want to offer kindness unconditionally, right? Universal friendliness, see all beings as one and interconnected. The person that you don't like is the bridge between conditional kindness and unconditional kindness. And so it really helped me neutralize my reaction to him so that I could get up in the morning and say like, no, like I can still make a difference. Like if I give up, he wins.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's what kept me going through the last like 3 years of that career while he was in office. As hard as it was, it taught me a lot about my own ability to cultivate compassion.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so important, like about that story in particular, is that this is where I get tripped up, and I see a lot of people get tripped up with this idea, is that practice, the practice of loving kindness, the practice of acknowledging interconnectedness, that is not for those people. You were not doing that loving kindness meditation in the hopes that Donald Trump would feel your loving kindness. You know, that is for you.
Exactly.
That is so you can feel empowered as you fight against these systems that are oppressive and are like, it's disgusting that an 8th grader could have that perspective. Like, it's awful. And it makes me feel so hard for that kid who is like very clearly going to grow up under those systems and actively participate. And so if you are listening to us say that and thinking that it's coming from a place of empathy from us to them, that's not necessarily the case. It is the empathy that I have for myself, the love that I have for myself, that makes me acknowledge the interconnectedness of all beings.
Yeah, because ultimately, like harboring that resentment, it did not affect him at all. Just like me harboring universal friendliness does not affect him at all. What it affects is my ability to show up in front of the next 8th grader. That's what it was impacting.
Exactly.
Was the next day when I went into the classroom again, I could take a deep breath and be like, okay. Because what happens is like, I would walk into the classroom and everyone with a red hat, I would feel that vehement, nauseous tightness in my chest. Whereas when I started doing this practice, I started seeing everyone with a red hat as like another human being that I have the opportunity to connect with. And ultimately, we can only learn and grow through connection. We can't learn and grow through hatred or violence. And so, yeah, it's a powerful practice. I'm not going to say it's an easy practice. It was really fucking difficult. It never got easier, but it did help me continue to stay the course. It does help me with taking action, which I think is another thing that you can do after election, whether, you know, you see the results as a win or lose. Like, we're not on here to tell you who you should vote for.
Although I guess we've made our stances pretty clear throughout this episode.
We've made our stances clear, but I feel like if you listen to the pod, like my hope is that our stances wouldn't be surprising to you. Though nothing surprises me at this time.
Honestly.
My hope is that this comes as no surprise.
Oh, the consent educator? Weird. I really thought I knew your voting history, but I'm learning I might be wrong today. No, like I think that
the one with the t-shirt that says feminist witch on it. Weird.
I think our values are clear throughout this podcast, but we're not going to tell you who to vote for. Yeah. But regardless of how you view this election, you view what's at stake, taking action on what you feel passionate in, that is a way to take that energy that we've cultivated and move it forward. And I really do think that's why that loving kindness and interconnectedness is so important, because that is what prevents burnout.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It fills your cup back up. And I would say, like, you're allowed to feel multiple things. Like, you're allowed to feel angry and sad and scared. And I think the loving kindness practice is a really powerful way to convert that fear, that anger, that whatever you feel into action, right? Like, rather than feeling like frozen with it, it's like, okay, what can I do? What can I do with this, right? What's the next step forward? Because ultimately, because we all have this right to vote, or at least many of us do, the outcome is somewhat in your control, but also out of your control. So it's a matter of like, maybe there's a preparation in your head of like, okay, what am I going to do if this is the outcome? What's the action that I'm going to take? Because I think taking action is a really powerful way to not feel like you're lost or at the mercy of others. Like whether that action is like signing up for your local, like, you know, local election and campaigning for that, or, you know, running for city council, or going to your city council meetings. You know, like I think sometimes we can feel disempowered when it comes to federal elections, but you have a lot more power in local elections. So maybe you turn your focus to that and trying to make your community a better place so that you can build that momentum to go outward.
Yeah, I think that the more disempowered I feel at larger levels, the more I've been turning my focus towards local. And especially like having moved to St. Pete, this is a community that I care a lot about, and I'm really excited to participate in that way. My mom is really involved in local Tarpon politics where she lives. And it's
shocking.
If
you listen to the podcast, you'd be shocked to know.
And she's really inspired me a lot. I feel like the older I get, the more I realize like I am so my mother, and anyone who meets us is like, yeah, fucking obviously. I am her carbon copy. But like the older I get, the more I realize these things that I really love about myself are things that I got from her. And that is one of them. And she's really taught me a lot about how empowering it can be to participate on a quote unquote smaller level, because those smaller levels are the larger impact.
Yeah.
So did we do it?
I don't know, man. I just want to say this. I feel like this episode is like, it feels heavy to talk about. Do you feel heavy? So, okay, I'm just going to invite us all to take a collective clearing breath.
I love that idea.
Okay, so when you're ready, take a deep breath in. Let it go out your mouth. And whatever the outcome is, you will find a way to get through it.
Together.
We love you.
We love you. Now we've done it.
Now go vote.
Go vote. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison. If you want to learn more about us, you can find all our links in the show notes.
We'd love to know what you think of today's episode, so drop us a review or give us a shout out on social media. And don't forget to let us know your magical moment of the week. Okay, love you. Bye.